How many times have I talked about Darq on this channel? I've reviewed the main game, the Tower DLC, and the game dev book that this game's creator has written, and for the fourth time, I'm here to mostly give praise to Vlad Marhulets. As the title suggests, I'll be covering both the latest and final DLC for Darq, titled The Crypt, as well as the fact that Darq is now labeled as a complete edition. It's impossible to ignore this game's newly added title screen, with an opening theme in the same vein as its end credits theme, a necessity when you port a PC game across all major platforms. And like before, you're able to select between the main 7 chapters and the 2 DLC chapters at will, so you can thoroughly enjoy your personal favorite level, or go for the shortest possible time. And that's about it for the complete edition. I've already given my 2 cents about everything before the Crypt, and you're more than welcome to watch those 2 reviews after watching this one. Now it's time to focus on the Crypt, the second free DLC that was released on December 4th, 2020. When you begin this level, you take in 2 things. You are in some seemingly religious tomb that is unsettlingly lit by candlelight, and Lloyd, the poor anorexic child that you control, has lost his mind. Literally, he left it behind back in the Tower DLC and neglected to take it with him. No worries though, because his head appears from a vase after you do an impression of an ostrich. This is the main mechanic of the Tower DLC, and what might make it the most impressive level in the entire game. You control 2 characters in head-to-headless gameplay, alternating between the 2 through those green glowing holes on the ground. And I'll get this nitpick out of the way. I do wish that there was a dedicated button to switch between the 2 at will, because you'll be running back and forth to switch your headless body in these holes rather frequently. Anyway, your first puzzle is this gate that you must trip 3 arrows to keep open, but you must do so as quickly as possible, otherwise the arrows will reset and you'll have to cover them again through a pathway that covers itself seconds after being displayed. Your next and somewhat Professor Layton-esque puzzle requires your headless body to enter through a gap and rest on a switch to access. It's not terribly difficult to solve, as long as you make use of the 2 corners and the top left and right as placeholders. To proceed to the next area, you must finish this one puzzle that has you match the coffins with the pistons above them. The puzzle has a give and take mechanic where you must drop one coffin to make another one lift. Not terribly difficult if you take your time with it. This is also where you get your first jump scare, as a reminder that you should be on guard at all times. That's another thing that makes the Crypt so impressive. The horror elements prevent respites from completing puzzles. You so much as sigh, you'll probably get startled, and they're placed in proper areas too. I would normally hate this in horror games, but Darq is one of the few exceptions. Anyway, your next puzzle has Lloyd's head wall rolling to put 4 circular pegs in their respective slots. This one could be solved with simple trial and error, and perhaps visualizing a move or 2 ahead. The door that opens has rather unsettling and familiar faces whispering something at you. Maybe they're beckoning you. The coin that you collected from the Professor Layton style puzzle is needed to begin this one. This is a timed puzzle, but significantly more difficult because the skull gets faster the more distance that it covers. You must quickly switch to your head and line up the path for the skull in order to get the first of 2 keys. Definitely a puzzle that requires trial and error, and even some anticipation and memorization of how many times you press each button with your face. And remember what I said about respite prevention? I'll be blunt here. I didn't exactly enjoy this bell puzzle the first time I did it. I thought that it was just a simple rhythm recognition puzzle, but it's another timed puzzle that requires trial and error, one where you must shift the panels to line up with the correct bell sequence. And you must be quick and accurate with this puzzle in order to get the second skull key, otherwise you'll be here a while. And I'm sure that you've forgotten about jump scares at this point. Don't worry, the Crypt will remind you. The final area of the Crypt, if you don't put out the candles... But after you put out the candles, you can proceed to and unlock the coffin with your keys. I think this is a metaphor for my first YouTube channel. Anyway, after Lloyd's body enters the coffin, his head must follow suit, and after a squelching sound that I can only imagine is his head reattaching to his body, you can actually move the coffin around, but only to the right, and through a wall, which fittingly takes you back to the house that you always end up in between chapters. The puzzle ends with the grandfather clock striking 12. That's essentially the Crypt, which I honestly believe is the most impressive level in Darq. When I first played through this DLC, it took me an hour to figure everything out blind, but when you understand that you must utilize the wall segment to allow Lloyd's head to roll onto the ceiling, placing Lloyd's head on this platform that moves outward and inward, and understand timed puzzles, you trim your learning curve significantly, and the frequent jump scares that occur in this puzzle definitely keep you on edge. They certainly spooked me a couple of times, even when I expected them, but the ones that didn't definitely made me recoil. Again, the only real nitpick I have about this DLC is the lack of a dedicated button to switch between Lloyd's head and body. I'm betting this would shave speedruns off the Crypt by a minute or two, but for less competitive gamers, it would greatly reduce traveling back and forth to green holes on the ground. And lastly, there are secret skulls to acquire in this DLC, much like the secret journal pages in the first 6 chapters of the main game. They're hidden in rather impressive points that do require exploration. If you care about the achievement for this, then make sure you don't go into the coffin room until you get all 4 skulls. And after you get them, what's your reward outside of the achievement?
Nothing! Now get out! What?
I still think that a commentary would have been nice to include. Oh well, at least we're getting a comic book that fleshes out the lore of Darq. That's the next best thing.